Coach, on Thursday you said you were looking to see some separation from your quarterbacks. Did you get some of that today?
I thought KJ had a really good day today. I thought Will did an admirable job as far as a lot of times a freshman goes out there first scrimmage, they'll flinch a little, but he came out of it fast. I thought he did some good things, and that, I thought the others I thought were competitive. They can line up and play to a point. I thought those two had the best scrimmage.
Up next, we'll go to Paul Jones.
Coach, on the other side of the ball, how did the secondary fare today against your offense?
I think it was mixed. I thought one thing I was impressed with is how well we open field tackled. I thought we did a good job of tackling. A lot of times at this point, you don't tackle as well as you want. Now, I haven't seen the film, so I don't know as far as, what defensively our thoughts are as far as a guy being in position, but I thought they tackled well. And then I also thought our receivers at times did a good job getting separation and making some plays. I thought it was a very productive scrimmage. I would have to categorize it as cautiously optimistic, a little better than I thought it may be.
Up next, we'll go to Steve Robertson.
Coach, from a pass protection standpoint, how do you feel like your offensive line performed?
I thought the first group did a good job. I thought it got mixed after that, but we were able to play, and it looked like football with 3 groups. So we were able to play 3 full groups, and it did look like football. And I can't say that it always does. Some is, how many bodies do you got? But some of them, some of our down the list guys, I thought were competitive too.
Up next, we'll go to Joel Coleman.
Coach, were there any players in particular that stood out that you could call by name that kind of had a really good scrimmage and you were just really impressed with what they did today?
I don't have the exact guys. I thought the defensive line did a good job getting pushed. They played the run really well. And then, some of the key plays, whether it be 3rd down or 4th down, we traded blows, had some big plays offensively there. Had some big plays defensively there. But the most positive thing is I thought we played together as units, when you consider where we're at in the course of things.
We're going to go back to Steve.
Coach, we talked a lot about quarterbacks, but what receivers are maybe separating themselves and maybe making a play for first team?
We spread the ball around pretty good today, which I think is a good thing. Malik Heath had a really good catch. I mean, one that was contested that he fought for and took away. And then I'd have to look at the numbers. I thought that Wally had some good catches. Austin Williams had some good catches. Tulu had a big catch. And then, I thought our backs were steady. We played a number of them. I thought they were steady. As these guys really wadded up the middle and blitzed a bunch. And then, and I think that was another thing the O-line did good, but also the defense did, And so it was back and forth. There weren't really any lulls. And I didn't think, even when we went with the 3rd group, there were any significant lulls. Maybe a play here, play there, but we had across the board solid competitive work. It's not one of those things where they start out all fired up and then sort of fade at the end. I never had that sense in the course of this, so I thought it was pretty competitive.
We'll go back to Paul.
Coach, how much were you able to work on the special teams today in the scrimmage? And if so, what did you see from that group?
They worked on it a lot. They had a meeting before. They worked on it quite a lot. And, and not just the fit type of stuff, but where they run downfield. So there was a lot of work there. As a matter of fact, I would say, as far as just like one solid period, our most competitive special teams work. And I thought it was pretty good. And then I thought field goal looked pretty good too.
We'll go back to Brian now.
Coach, with the first scrimmage in the bag now, does what you want to do in practice change? Do you expect more now at this point?
You try to channel the reps around the guys that are starting to separate themselves. I think that'd be the biggest thing. There's no scheme overhauls. If anything, we'll probably cut some plays rather than add plays. And, you know, as we kind of identify what we're really good at and then really polish that up. You know, nothing really dramatic, just kind of some of the doodad stuff. But with that said, we're still going to, you know, motion several things. And I think we've responded overall pretty well as far as being able to motion and execute plays, snap it on time, that type of thing.
We'll go back to Steve again.
Coach, with the first scrimmage in the books, what does that mean now as far as paring things down and kind of limiting reps and kind of getting a little more focus on the depth chart?
Well, I mean, that's a step towards that for sure. It's a big step towards it. You know, it's not the complete picture. I mean, sometimes, you know, there's good players out there that don't get opportunities or something like that, you know, because there's a randomness to it. You go the first group and then which is only so many plays, and then the second group, which is only so many plays. And so, you know, there is a little bit of randomness. There's you know, there's some, I guess the quick way to say it would be there's some relatively average guys that had the opportunity to show what they could do, and there's some fairly good players that may not have. And then so practice continues to figure into the evaluation. But I think what this does is it increases the tempo to a point where there's an extra set of pressure and intensity as far as operating at this pace, because it's faster than kind of some of the instructional nature that exists in a practice. And, you know, and one thing that we are able to do is we enforce penalties. Some guys on the first scrimmage, they don't enforce penalties. In my case, it's varied a little bit, but we enforced all of them today, and we're able to do that. And it did look like football, and it doesn't always.
Up next, we'll go back to Joel.
You may get tired of talking about them, Coach, but we ask you about quarterbacks all the time. I know that you said that KJ has kind of been a little bit ahead. I've heard you say that a couple of times now. When do you think you, whether it's to them or maybe even to us in the media, when do you think you would maybe have that narrowed down and have a starter? Could it possibly be game week or maybe before?
I think it'll be before. I don't expect it to be tomorrow, but I think it'll be before game week. And I don't know that it'll be next week either.
Up next, we'll go to Tyler Horka.
Yeah, Mike, based on what you've been saying and everything we've heard, it sounds like it's between KJ and Will. Following up on Joel's question, is that what it's down to, or is it still kind of open between all 3 or 4 of those guys?
Still kind of open, but less open than it was.
We'll go back to Brian up next.
Coach, when you do these scrimmages, and of course you've been doing practice, do you feel like it comes easier for the veteran players who are undergoing a new system, or is it easier for the guys who are just coming in sort of fresh, like a Malik Heath or a Tulu Griffin, who this is really all they're going to know?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think mainly, you know, if I had to pick one, I'd go with the experience. You know, I think the experience is definitely appealing because they have the ability to adjust. And you know, here's some of these guys have had to adjust to, you know, a couple new staffs. And so then, you know, I think experience is something that's hard to for a young guy to defeat. But there's definitely some youth and enthusiasm out there that, you know, guys just really excited to be there and really hungry to show what they can do. And I thought both were exhibited today on all sides of the ball, all 3 sides.
We'll go back to Tyler.
Mike, I know it's not something y'all share specifics on, and I'm not looking for specifics, but I think today Tennessee canceled a scrimmage because they had 44 players who they didn't know if they came into contact with COVID or not. And then earlier in the week, Lane Kiffin said he doesn't even know who his first and second team is because guys are in and out all the time. And I'm just wondering if you guys have had any challenges with that, or for the most part, you've been able to hold practices as you normally would without a pandemic.
Knock on wood, we have. Yes, we have. And we've had a pretty complete group, and, you know, and I don't know if it's luck and circumstance, but I do know that Thomas Callens, our trainers, and those guys have been very vigilant on everything they do as far as, you know, the testing, the masks, and then routines for separation and those type of things.
We'll go back to Steve.
Coach, there always seems to be somebody that elevates their game in a scrimmage type setting. Did you have any gamers today or anybody that perhaps surprised you?
I think some of those guys on the first O line did. And I think, and I can't pinpoint it, but I thought the secondary flowed to the ball well. And it was a scrimmage. What was positive about it, and also why it's hard to say, is, and this is the most positive thing, is everything was contested. I mean, all sides, both offense and defense, have plenty to be pissed about, and that's usually pretty good news for a competitive team, as long as it's not, you know, some slop fest, and it was not. There were some well-executed things out there, and there were a lot of plays that either side won by, you know, just a couple inches, and so the competitiveness I was very pleased with.
Let's go back to Joel.
I know your week one opponent's kind of dealing with some guys that have opted out and things. And as far as you know, is that kind of here at Mississippi State? Is there any other guys that may be considering that, or as far as you know, is that kind of has that ship sailed kind of thing at this point?
That's difficult to say. You never know what you know, what some guy's thinking or what's going on. You know, the biggest thing is just coach the ones that are here the best you can, you know.
Up next, we'll go to Paul.
Coach, back to the offensive line. A guy like Greg Allen has played offensive tackle pretty much his whole career at Mississippi State, and you moved him to offensive guard. How has that transition gone for Greg Allen so far at guard?
Oh, I think he's been impressive. He provides some leadership. You know, he literally, you know, views it like kind of a trade, a job, a craft, all the words you want to use. You know, where he's very dedicated as far as watches a lot of film, comes in and talks to Coach Miller all the time. You know, he takes it very seriously. And then also I think that elevates to others, which I think is important, because I've always thought offensive line's the most important position on a team.
We'll go back to Joel.
We were talking to Marcus Murphy the other night, and he obviously has a situation at home with his son, kind of, I guess, would be considered at risk. Don't know over the course of the last few months how well you've gotten to know Marcus, but given his circumstance and situation that he's had, how have you kind of seen him, I guess, handle his business at the facility in order, you know, to protect his son and things?
Well, he's got kind of a lot of presence and maturity about him, and I think that's kind of one of his strengths. And you know, so, and we'll help him any way that we can. But I think he's done an impressive job, and you know, I hope our team realizes that, because they can draw from that, you know, because he does have kind of an inner strength.
Go to Steve next.
Coach, you've known KJ Costello as a competitor and an opponent, and then as a recruit. Now that you have him under your supervision, what are your thoughts about him, and what do you think he does well, and perhaps what does he need to work on?
Well, I think everybody's a work in progress. I think all of us as coaches are works in progress, starting with me. So KJ, I think, is as well. I think his strengths are, you know, he's a student of the game. I think the other thing is he's the same guy every snap. He's not a guy that gets rattled. And so then I think that creates a level of stability with the offense. He's accurate. He can throw it a long ways downfield. I think sometimes, you know, he gets big arm guy disease, which is, you know, I mean, because we want these guys to run with it after they catch it. And he'll gas that sucker in there. And, yeah, you could say, oh yeah, the guy should have caught it. He shouldn't have bobbled it or whatever. But there's a difference. You add an extra 10 miles an hour on that sucker, and then the guy's hanging on for his life to catch it and then going to run full with it. So a little more touch at times maybe, but footwork, I mean, what do I want him to improve on? Everything, but he certainly has a lot of strengths, and he certainly has more strengths and weaknesses that put him above most people in the country.
Still have time for a few more questions. Up next, we'll go to Tyler Horka.
Like Joel said, there's not going to be a shortage of quarterback questions. Going back to what you said Thursday about the separation and about you wanting to see some consistency, what are some specific things that you saw in the scrimmage that made you say at the beginning of this press conference that both KJ and Will had a pretty good scrimmage?
Well, we were more consistent than I expected. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we were consistent because we weren't, but we were more so than I expected. And then I think some of that, the quickest way to iron that out, and it's hard because you got to make decisions as far as who to put where and, whether they're first team, second team, third team, all that stuff. But as they log a lot of reps with the same people, that helps elevate the consistency, then they have a sense of everybody's got little habits and nuances that they do. And as you get used to that, then, things run more smoothly, even just the kind of the demeanor in the huddle, the pace in the huddle, all those things. And so that's the thing, is to get the key guys all working together and packing the reps into them.
Up next, we'll go to Dalton Middleton.
Coach, you mentioned a few times, more consistent than you expected, better scrimmage than you expected. I guess 3 weeks in as a whole, do you feel like that y'all are performing better than you expected to be at this point, I guess?
Well, I was more on a search for where we were at when all this started. So that's tough to say, but I guess I feel like as an entire team, this was one of our best practices we've had in camp, probably the best one.
Up next, we'll go back to Steve.
Coach, it's a different day and time for Colin Hill. How do you think he's kind of handling the transition, and what are your impressions of him so far in camp?
Well, he's a real physical guy, like when he triggers on a play, he goes full throttle. And, everybody knows the intensity that he runs with. He's got great hands. The other thing is, and I guess what has impressed me the most is, on pass protection or blocking. I mean, he hits those guys with an energy. I mean, he, has pretty good technique and he explodes into them. And I think, that's key for a back. And I bet, running back's the toughest position to play, because you're asking those guys to do everything. And so that's why people put the best athletes there. And he fills that role.
All right. Thank you, Coach, for joining us today.
All right. Appreciate it. Good to see you again. Free Coke.
Thanks, guys, for coming out today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.